All right, welcome into the hard count. It is Thursday, January 30th, 2025, last one on the face of the planet. A lot to jump into today. You wouldn't think at the end of January there'd be a ton of meat on the bone in the world of college football. You would be wrong. I know a lot of our sickos are already dialed in. Thank you for that. What's the key to 2025? That's kind of a broad question, but I think it's quarterback play. Maybe a further point to make there is I think it's quarterback development for a couple of these party crasher teams. Notice now, some of these big dogs in the sport have a solid talent at quarterback, but at the same time, a new face at quarterback without a ton of starting experience. So what's the window of opportunity for a Florida or a Nebraska or a Texas A&M? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Speaking of Texas A&M, I put them in my top 10, and I heard from all of y'all in a very emphatic fashion that you do not believe they are worthy of a top 10 ranking. I heard specifically from the folks in College Station saying, hey, JD, listen, we appreciate it, but don't do this to us. Not again. Not again. We'll talk about that together a little bit later. I want to start here, though. There's a new chapter in the saga that has been Michigan and Connor Stalions and the NCAA, and then also you have the subplot of a little Jim Harbaugh versus Brett Bielema. Let's start there. Brett Bielema, being a menace on Twitter, love him for it, the head coach of Illinois, quotes a clip of Jim Harbaugh, an old clip of Jim Harbaugh now, mind you, when he was the head coach of the 49ers, essentially saying, hey, it's important to tell the truth. If you don't tell the truth, that's on you. You should tell the truth no matter what, is essentially what he says in the clip. Brett Bielema quotes that on Twitter and says, well, is that why you ran to the NFL? Essentially saying, hey, you got caught cheating, therefore you decided to take your party to the NFL and you ran essentially from the smoke, is what he's getting at. Now, I have no problem with Brett Bielema breaking out the Twitter fingers, but it parlays pretty nicely in the timeline into the story breaking from Yahoo's Ross Dellinger that Michigan, putting boxing gloves on, getting ready to get after it with the NCAA when it comes to the Connor Stalions allegations. To put it simply, Michigan feels like the NCAA jumped the gun, sent him a 137-page novel using words like or phrases like wildly overreaching, grossly overreaching, things of that nature, to pretty much say to the NCAA, hey, listen, you brought the hammer down pretty swiftly on Jim Harbaugh. Feels like you might bring the hammer down on a one Sharon Moore for the way that he went about his cell phone inbox. We're going to call your bluff on that. Think you moved too quick? Let's dance. Let me say this. Nobody is wrong for how they feel about this situation. If you're an Ohio State fan, if you're a Big Ten fan in general, you probably feel like, hey, Michigan cheated. That's wrong. They should be punished. Bury them under the jail. I don't think you're wrong for having that opinion. If you're a Michigan fan, you're saying, hey, got that natty. Connor Stalions hasn't worked for us for a minute. Touch grass if you got a problem with this. My take on this, when this whole thing started around Connor Stalions and the whole sign stealing investigation and those allegations was, yeah, Michigan probably cheated. Yeah, they should be punished. And with that being said now, as to how much they should be punished, we're probably going to disagree on. Taking a step further, as to the impact that the alleged sign stealing had on Michigan's success is another discussion overall. Sign stealing is wrong, and the way that sign stealing allegedly was conducted from Michigan's side was wrong. But for the record, they were punished. Jim Harbaugh missed the Penn State game, the Ohio State game, missed the Maryland game, I believe it was as well for Michigan. He missed the most important stretch of Michigan's season at the end of the year where they played some Big Ten opponents that matched up with them well on the roster side of things, and they took care of business, ultimately won the national championship. So did it really impact Michigan's success on the field? For me, it's probably a lot more about the double-digit draft picks that Michigan had that made the difference on the field, neither here nor there. But I get it. If you feel intense disdain for this whole thing around Michigan, I hear you. I don't think you're wrong. But as we let the dust settle on this whole thing, on the Connor Stalions saga, and again, the dust has settled, just so we're all on the same page. Ohio State, they won a national championship. Michigan, they got their natty. And then this season, with Jim Harbaugh gone, with Connor Stalions gone, they beat Ohio State again. I'm kind of can we just kind of let sleeping dogs lie a little bit here? Again, I'm not condoning cheating. I'm not saying that Michigan didn't cheat. I'm not saying they shouldn't be punished. For the record, again, they were punished. But do we really have to keep digging this up and making this a story and bringing our energy to it? Unless Michigan is facing massive punishment. I'm talking loss of scholarships to a point where it would hurt them. I'm talking postseason ban. I'm talking revoking of their national championship. Both two of those things, the last two I mentioned, both postseason ban and their national title being stripped from them. Both things I've heard are probably not in play, just again from what I've heard. It's been a minute here. It's been a full college football season since this whole story unfolded. I don't really have the energy to get super upset about this anymore. I don't have the energy to keep rehashing this. Like, what's the point? What's the point? If you're Michigan, again, maybe you're trying to maybe save face a little bit, and maybe you're trying to protect Sharon more to some degree, and if that's what you're doing, more power to you. But even Connor Stalions, I feel like his public reputation is somewhat intact. Like, I don't think there's this massive disapproval rating for a Connor Stalions. I think the Netflix documentary did a good amount to try and repair that. I think a lot of people left that doc saying, yeah, did he break the rules? Maybe, but gosh dang it, if I wouldn't want that guy on my team. That was kind of how I felt watching that thing. And again, I have no dog in the fight here. I'm not an Ohio State fan, not a Michigan fan. I don't have any major stakes in this whole discussion. I'm just here saying I understand why it was a story. I understand in the moment why we felt so passionately about it. But legitimately, Ohio State got their national title. Michigan got their national title. There's a new head coach. Connor Stalions doesn't work at Michigan anymore. Do we need to keep prolonging this whole song and dance? I guess it's January, so to some degree, I'll continue to talk about it as much as it becomes a story. But if you're doing the whole thing where it's trying to, re-award national titles based on what Michigan had going for them in 2023 rather, during their season, I don't have anything for you. Last time I'll say this, the take for me is Michigan probably cheated. They should have and were punished. They then proceeded to win the most important games in their schedule in the regular season, and then proceeded to win the national championship. Not saying it's right, but I am saying the draft picks probably had a lot more to do with it than any signs ever did. So I understand we'll get some pushback from both sides. That's totally fine. Michigan's going to handle this thing in court, or at least they want to handle this thing in court. They're making it look like they want to handle things in court. But for me personally, for us as the college football public, let's move on. We got much more to talk about in the wonderful world that is modern college football, with a new playoff and NIL and the portal and things that are much more pertinent, that didn't exist to the same degree they did during that era. The show, The Hard Count, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. I've said this a couple times. I want to say it one more time. If you haven't used code HARDCOUNT, I believe you have until the beginning of February to make good on using that code. What that code does for you, you play a lineup, $5 over at prizepicks.com. Use that code, gets you $50 in promo funds. So the Super Bowl, right around the corner. Use that code because on the day of the game, I'm not 100% sure you'll be able to. So code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. Get 50 free play for the Super Bowl. Not a bad deal. We all win. Roll, party, roll. So in 2025, we're in a really interesting spot when it comes to where the traditional powers sit and where some of these teams that I would classify as party crashers sit. Your Floridas, your Tennessees, I guess you could say Nebraskas, your Kansas States, schools that aren't necessarily the top betting favorite to win the national championship, and the schools that are in that top six when it comes to the national title contention. So if you look at the odds in Vegas, 5 of the top 6 teams that are favored to win a national championship will all be starting a new quarterback next year. The one school that's not is Penn State. So you got Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, all with new quarterbacks next year. The reason why that's intriguing is look at where we're at right now when it comes to the college football playoff. Got a 12-team format, so in some ways, by nature of the number of teams, there's more opportunity than ever before. But there's also less depth than ever before. It's not me saying that. That's Kirby Smart. That's pretty much every coach that steps in front of a microphone that's asked about the portal. It's a lot harder to have your 2 deep and 3 deep look the way that it would have looked 5 years ago. Why? Because if I'm a guy on the 3 deep at Georgia, guess what? I'm not sticking around on the scout team, brother. I'm going to go start somewhere. I'm going to go have a chance to make my own impact on a roster this year. So, with that being the case, what I think it's done is it's made the importance of the quarterback position, I think, substantially more than it's ever been. And I don't want to dismiss the threshold of roster talent you have to have, but we live in a day and age in modern college football where I think the quarterback can be the guy that elevates you to at least the semifinals, potentially a national title. Like Will Howard, I don't want to discredit how stacked Ohio State's roster was. We've said it many times. Best roster in college football. I don't think that's really a discussion. But with that best roster in college football, I would argue Will Howard had the best playoff of any quarterback in that 12-team field. I played the most games, sure, but for me, the way that Will Howard got hot and made that whole roster work together, the way that he elevated that roster, to me was a massive part as to why that won the national championship. And so I look at a bunch of these different, again, party crashers. You look up and down all these Power 4 conferences, there's a lot of dudes now that have real next step potential to make a ton of difference for them that are going to be in their second year starting. Like, just look at the SEC in general. Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway, Nico Iamaleava, Marcel Reed, John Mateer. I get it's a new place at Oklahoma, but like it's his second full year starting in the same system under Ben Arbuckle coming over from Washington State. The Big Ten, Raiola, Jaden Mayava, not had a full year necessarily under at USC, but it's his second year being the guy, if you will, getting past the keys towards the end of the season. The Big 12, Sam Levitt, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, the ACC, Kevin Jennings, Eli Holstein. So you see, I'm naming all these different individuals. What's going to make the difference for those teams finding a way to elevate and to win their conference, and by that nature, being a team that makes the college football playoff and having a chance to make some noise when they get there? I'm not trying to, again, dismiss the importance of roster talent, but let's just play this hypothetical game. I know hypothetical has kind of become a dirty word in college football media as of late, but let's try to do this together sort of under the radar. Let's just say, for example, DJ Lagway gives you an all-SEC product in 2025. Say he plays at that level. Is there any game on Florida's schedule where they're definitely going to lose? Is there any game you just say, nope, Florida, sorry, can't win that one? Georgia's got a new quarterback. I mean, the way that Florida finished the year last year should inspire a lot of confidence. It's kind of the preview to the rest of the movie. Like, if DJ Lagway is that dude, how are we talking about Florida? Talk about Nebraska in the Big Ten. We broke down their schedule the other day talking about phase 3 of the Matt Rule era. If Dylan Raiola takes a massive step, getting some more time with Dana Holgorsen, we saw how he performed at the end of the year as the new OC out there in Lincoln and how he made strides. Y'all, if Dylan Raiola elevates to where he's an all Big Ten caliber quarterback, Nebraska's making the playoff. And again, a lot of folks are going to say you're pandering, you're this, you're that, because there's this thought that, pro-Nebraska propaganda puts you in a good spot on YouTube. That's not the point I'm making here. Dylan Raiola, if he elevates, puts Nebraska in a different category in 2025 because of what I just said. Ohio State, new quarterback. Michigan, should be really good, new quarterback. Penn State, new quarterback. Penn State returning a quarterback. Oregon, a new quarterback. Like there's a lot of uncertainty across this conference with schools that you would probably tab as the quote-unquote favorite to win the conference. And that's for really any given conference in college football at this point in time. So how do these guys make the jump is probably the next question. Okay, JD, you're telling me that if DJ Lagway balls out, good things happen. And it's the same for Marcel Reed as it is for Nico Iamaleava, as it is for Lenora Sellers. All that is true. So how does that happen? Well, how does anything make sense for you? How does anything start to progress in a positive way when it comes to your doing a certain task or learning a certain skill? In school, if you have a good tutor, have a pretty good chance to up your level of game for the next test. Have a pretty good chance to start to improve in that certain subject. Great coaches are the exact same way. They have a certain way of helping the light bulb come on. Like Lincoln Riley did a great job with this with Jalen Hurts when he was at Oklahoma. Did the same thing, obviously, with multiple other quarterbacks. The point I'm trying to make is whichever quarterback is able to take the biggest jump, they're going to have a very real chance to make the most noise in 2025 because I feel like it's that wide open across the board. Like in the playoff, of course, there's going to be a certain price of admission. Of course, you got to be able to have solid line of scrimmage play. Of course, you got to have a solid defense. But if all those factors are at least within the threshold of competitiveness from any given matchup, Florida's going to be one of those teams. Tennessee could be one of those teams. A&M could be one of those teams. So in that way, there's a lot more pressure shifting to these different staffs. And to play that out even further, let's just say that, let's say it is a Kansas State that has massive success, or let's say it is a Texas A&M that has massive success, either one of those schools. At that point in time, think about the credentials you then have when it comes to developing a quarterback. Hey, we had this guy that was good last year, went to elite this year, changed our postseason, reality. And here we sit now, a team that's got a chance to go make some college football playoff noise because of how our offensive staff caters to and develops and elevates quarterbacks. When that's your billboard, Lincoln Riley's had this for a while. I mentioned that. Mike Denbrock had it at LSU, now has it at Notre Dame. Sark has this at Texas. When the quarterback position and your recruitment and development of that kind of speaks for itself, a lot of your work within your roster gets easier. You then have the poster for your movie the rest of the way. So that's a ripple effect you probably wouldn't see this year, obviously, but given the next couple of years for these different schools, if Colin Klein elevates Marcel Reed and we're saying, hey now, Colin Klein, Will Howard and what he ended up being this past season at Ohio State, seeing what Marcel Reed was at A&M, hey, we'll see now. We'll see about Colin Klein. He might not be the worst quarterback guru to commit to. Get the quarterback, guess what? People want to play with the quarterback, portal or otherwise. When you have a dude at the most important position in sports that touches the ball every single snap, there is confidence across the locker room, across the campus that we're going to be in good shape. We got a chance. And so when that's your pitch to any given recruit, hey, we got a quarterback, come play with us, we're going to be successful, starts to kind of have this domino effect. So to make my point clear here, 2025 is a really interesting year because of all these second-year starters that had a good year last year, but have a chance to make a massive jump in be elite and have some tremendous success and have their school break in because of those other teams that have been, known commodities, quote unquote, but still starting new players, still have to have it translate. And I think that's going to make for a really fun 2025. And the playoff is fun regardless, but it's going to become that much more exciting because of the quarterback play. Whoever develops the best and the furthest and makes the biggest jump will be a force in college football. Mark my words, across the country, we got a lot of good second-year guys. I can't wait to watch it. Cannot wait to watch it. And I know we're a ways away from it, but that's all right. Regardless, we can still get excited. Speaking of getting excited, I'm excited to tell y'all, the Hard Count presented to you by our friends over at Axia Time. Now, Axia, you've heard of them a couple of times from the show, the official timepiece of the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. So a couple of words about Axia. One, the watches are dope. I own one. I love it. Nicest thing that I own. Helps me dress up a t-shirt. But also, they got a college football playoff custom watch for every team that made the 12-team playoff and a specific custom watch for Ohio State having won the national championship. So if you're a Buckeye fan, get your watch. Within that box that they shipped the watch in, a little post-game confetti from the celebration in Atlanta when Ohio State, of course, won the whole darn thing. So check them out, axiatime.com. That's A-X-I-A time.com. A watch that tells so much more than time. College football people, college football product. You love to see it. We appreciate them bringing the juice, as they always do, on the program today. So speaking of juice and speaking of programs, tell you what, there's a rivalry played in the state of South Carolina between Clemson and the Gamecocks. And I think this rivalry is, I hate using the stock analogy, so I won't, but I think the future of this rivalry is extremely bright. I think that when we look at the college football playoff going forward, this is more or less going to be a play-in game. And the reason why I feel that way is just look at this year. Look at both those operations. Both Clemson and South Carolina definitively have the trajectory arrow pointing straight up. Clemson, bring back Cade Klubnik for another year. We've talked a lot about their hire of Tom Allen. We love it. Talked a lot about the skill players for the first time in a minute. I love it on the perimeter with Wesco and Moore. I said again, I think Cade Klubnik has the glow-up of all glow-ups from what 2024 was for him. Oh, by the way, Dabo Swinney's still your head coach. He's still got his fastball. Oh, by the way, now just dipping their finger in the portal. Not grabbing it with two hands, but they're participating. That's all we've ever asked Clemson to do. Clemson, no, look now, they just won the ACC, and they're going to be a force. Surprise, surprise. Dabo's got the Roy bus rolling. Who would have thought? South Carolina now, on the other hand, was a team that going into the year we thought, hey, if they can just make a bowl game and save Shane Beamer's job, that'd be awesome. They did a lot more than that. They darn near made the college football playoff. Lenore Sellers, I told you, I think he is the best quarterback in college football returning next season. You could argue they have two of the top 10 players in what edge Dylan Stewart is, and what he was as a true freshman was just darn right inappropriate in every single sense of the word. The future at South Carolina is enormously bright. And again, I think the approval rating for a Shane Beamer, obviously with the Dabo Swinney, both coaches, is in a really strong place right now. So to put it simply, I think we're about to enter into what I would call a golden age of the Palmetto Bowl. There was a point in time where Clemson owned it 7 years in a row, sure, but the last 3 years, it's been flip-flop on who wins that thing. It's competitive. It brings juice. I mean, I was watching Rivalry Saturday, as we always do every single year, but I was pretty dialed into what was going on with South Carolina Clemson. Had the quad box up. I would flash back and forth because Ohio State and Michigan was going on, and that was one that had a surprising result. So we tuned into that. But like when that day started for me, South Carolina Clemson was my 1A in terms of games I wanted to watch. Why? The stakes, both were really good. It had playoff implications, all those things. And so in a weird way, I think the juice around this game is going to be the high tide that elevates all boats. Roll with me for a second here. We did a breakdown on a rivalry for Ohio State-Michigan. Second Ohio State-Michigan referenced this segment, so shout out to them. But I compared those two teams to essentially being gym partners. Like, they just got the best out of each other. And maybe it was a little bit toxic, a lot of bit toxic at times, but they elevated each other. Why? Ohio State, when they got beat by Michigan last season, they said, we got to change something, hit the portal hard, put together a roster with allegedly $20 million, and they go win a national championship. Michigan, by nature of what happened under Jim Harbaugh, they drew a line in the sand, and they found a way to get on the right side of that rivalry for now the last 4 years. So the point I'm trying to make here is, in the context of Clemson and South Carolina, it's not the same analogy of two gym partners. I think even more so, it's kind of like having two boxers, two prize fighters that the better they are, the more hype they have around this fight, the more eyeballs, the more excitement, all of that, that's the high tide that's going to raise all boats. Because for Clemson and South Carolina, it isn't the Iron Bowl. It isn't the Michigan-Ohio State. But I think we're slowly but surely, again, in an era now where both these coaches and both these programs have an arrow pointing straight up. I think we're going to see a future now in the Palmetto Bowl where it is more often than not a play-in game for the playoff. Now, it's weird to say that because they're in different conferences, so it doesn't actually impact their chances to win their conference. You talk about at-large bids, this definitely has a massive impact. It had a massive impact for South Carolina this year. I sat here on the desk on Sunday morning and said, okay, you beat Clemson, a team that could make the playoff. You should feel pretty confident if you're a South Carolina fan about your resume when it comes to Selection Sunday. Now, you need some help, and they didn't get that. But the point being, with the juice around this game, and again, the optics in this game feeling bigger and all of that, that pumps energy, that pumps relevance, that pumps excitement into your season, into your program, and into the way that you finish. So what does that mean? I said the word optics now a few times. Why is optics important in college football? There's something to posturing, of course, but optics to me have a massive ripple effect when it comes to recruiting. In both these schools now, I think with the coaches they have and from what I can gather, the resources they have and the brand power they have, if they're able to improve optics even further, and I think this rivalry will do that, can you imagine a world where both Clemson and South Carolina recruit in the top 12 together, top 15 together? What that would do to me is it puts you at a certain talent threshold to where you can play with anybody. Now, you may not have the better talent every single Saturday when you line up with the Ohio States of the world or the Georgias of the world or whoever, but I do think it puts you within striking distance of, okay, if we have our matchups, if we have our generational players, I hate saying generational, but if we have our dudes, whether it's a TJ Moore, whether it's a Dylan Stewart, a Lenora Sellers, if we have those guys, we're going to be all right. We're going to have a chance to really make some noise and potentially go on a run here and find ourselves in that Final Four or find ourselves in the national title game. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to assume that could be the future for both these teams. And in a roundabout way, the success of a Clemson benefits South Carolina when it comes to playing this final game and vice versa for Clemson. Having this be a marquee game, having game day in Death Valley or having game day in Columbia for the final week of the season as opposed to a Michigan-Ohio State or as opposed to an Iron Bowl, like think about how much that would create just a vibe around either one of these spots or a vibe around the rivalry in general. And vibes aren't everything, but tell you what, to recruits, they mean something. Turning on the game day on Saturday morning, if I'm a five-star quarterback and saying, Herbie and McAfee and Reese Davis, they're all just, I guess they're at that. Okay, that must be a pretty big game. There's a pretty big spotlight on both those schools right now. I've got offers from both those places. Looks like a pretty good time. Looks like a pretty big game. I want to play in a big spotlight. So it's bizarre to say this, but again, both sides, success of both benefits the other. And I think with the arrow pointing up the way that I've mentioned now 3 times that it is for both these schools and both these coaches, I think we're about to enter into a golden age of the Palmetto Bowl, and I'm here for it. I'm all the way here for it. One of the more underrated rivalries in the sport. I love everything about it. So we've done a couple of exit meetings on this show already with a number of different schools, but I think today is a good time for us to do an exit meeting / definitive opinion around our friends in College Station. I put A&M in my top 10. Am I way too early? Top 10 teams in college football? It was way too early, but we got a lot of pushback on that saying, JD, please don't do this. Please don't. We do this every year. Every year y'all put us in the top 10, and every year it comes crashing down. Why do this to us? Why now? First of all, I had A&M at number 20 going into last season, so just so we're all on the same page there. I did not, in fact, have A&M in my preseason top 10. But why do we feel this way? We'll take a look at what was last year and what's going forward here for A&M. But again, this is a exit meeting brought to you by our friends over at Huel. It's a long way till next season. Need your calories. You do. You know, calories are a measurement of energy, and Huel is ready to drink. Essentially, it has all that you need. They're ready to drink Black Edition, high in protein, low in sugar, packed with all the nutrients that your body needs to perform at its best, and to get through this part of the year into spring football, into college football season, and beyond. So use code HARDCOUNT15, 15% off, plus a free gift. Not bad for new customers. HARDCOUNT15, 15% off, plus a free gift over at Huel.com. That's HUEL.com. Start the year off strong, unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. And I said this, what really matters for A&M fans right now is trying to get rid of what has been not so fondly referred to across Texas A&M spaces as battered Aggie syndrome. What that means is just what I said at the open. Every year, you're told how good you're going to be. You're told you can expect good things in the postseason. You're told that you've got a great roster. And then what happens? 7-5, 8-4, whatever. And your feelings are valid. Your feelings are real, but they're not always reliable. I had a pastor that would always say that. Hey, trust your feelings to a certain extent. You're not wrong for how you feel, but also don't make decisions strictly off your feelings. Your feelings are temporary. They're not going to be actually the reality of your situation. And it's kind of like your buddy who is just like giving up dating. It's like, hey, she seems like a nice girl. She seems interested in you. You say, nope, all girls are the same. What? By definition, no, every girl is not the same. No, I've done it. I've tried it too many times. I've tried dating. They're all the same. It always ends up the same way for me. And that's kind of, I think, what A&M's doing right now to some extent when they look at themselves in the mirror and say we're not a top 10 team. Why? Well, because we've tried it before. We've tried to have hope, and it always goes a certain way. Based on what? Well, I mean, the last couple of years. Oh, you mean the last couple of years where Mike Elko wasn't the head coach? Like, the thing that I don't understand is when you try to tie a result of a team to a logo or a jersey or a place, like Texas A&M is not snake bitten. You have a new coach. And when you have a new coach, you have a new DNA. And a new DNA, I think, should translate to new results. Like, you think about what A&M's been in the past. Yeah, it's unfortunately underachieved. I hate it. You hate it. We all hate it. But, like, Mike Elko wasn't the head coach for that. Marcel Reed wasn't the coach for that. Le'Veon Moss wasn't toting the rock for that. I mean, Colin Klein wasn't the OC for that. So you see where I'm going. Like, there's a bunch of new circumstances here. And I get why you feel the way that you feel. But you look at what this team is, look at what this roster is. Look to the future of A&M football. I think the future's pretty gosh darn bright, man. I think there's a lot to be excited about. Like, when you look at like the narrative around A&M saying, well, we always get our hopes up, the media always props us up, and then we fall flat on our face. It's embarrassing. You know who else they said that about for a long time? You're going to hate this comp? Texas. What changed? They hired the right guy. They hired a guy who got what the school was, got what the job was. Well, Texas is, I hate to say it if you're an Aggie fan, but in last 2 years, college football playoff attendee. Okay? So Mike Elko, again, wasn't the head coach for that. And going back to what I said about DNA, you underachieved the last couple of years, and not to throw shade at Jimbo Fisher, because I think there's a lot more to his situation than just Jimbo Fisher being at fault, but you are the head coach. Like, Jimbo Fisher semi-consistently underachieved at A&M. You have a coach whose DNA and Mike Elko, all he's done is overachieve his whole life. Got a job at Duke, and they were 3-9 when he took the job. What happens the next year? Turn that around, win 9 football games. Okay, yeah. 8 plus a bowl win, that'll work. Overachieving. Did more with less. At a school in Duke, who no shade to Duke, but like they're a basketball school. I love them. Riley Leonard, I love him in general too, and what he is as a quarterback. But like, this is a 3-star guy out of high school. So when you look to the future for A&M, yeah, there's the same talking points of, Sure, they're a talented team. Sure, the roster is there, all that. But again, to have a guy in Mike Elko who specializes in what I said when he got hired was the things that A&M needed, structure, toughness, that buzzword culture, all those things, that's what he majors in. You pair that with talent, you're going to be in good shape. You look at the schedule, like where is the game where you just chalk up a loss for A&M? Where are they just totally outmatched? Okay, you look at the game against Notre Dame. Got to go to Notre Dame, playoff team last year, lost them in College Station. Riley Leonard's not running out the tunnel for the Irish. It's going to be a new quarterback. You're the one bringing back the quarterback. You're the one who should have a pretty good amount of experience. Okay, you play Auburn. Tough loss last year in overtime, and Jordan Hare. They got to come to you this year. Worth noting. Florida, be a tough game. Get them in Kyle Field. South Carolina, brutal loss. Get them at home. At LSU, won that game a year ago. And you got to go to Death Valley, but like won it a year ago. Won it last year in Kyle Field. So I'm just looking up and down all of the things that are ahead of A&M. And the game at Texas. I mean, Texas, look at the score, it was a 10-point game. I don't think it's something you have to just mark up as a loss. I don't think anybody in College Station is doing that by any stretch of the imagination. They have a new quarterback too. So, like, all these things that I look at in retrospect from last year to this year for Texas A&M, sure, the South Carolina game sucks, but there's no reason you have to lose it again. There's nothing that says that you can't take a step forward. So the makings of Texas A&M plus the roster, or plus the schedule, I should say, get me really excited. Returning quarterback, returning OC. The defense loses some production. Here's what I would say about that. As long as Mike Elko is your head coach, I have confidence in the defense. JD, you're just giving us blind confidence. There's no real take there. Well, you got Torian York back, captain of the defense. That's one thing. But the other part is coaches who have a side of the ball that they have specialized in across their career usually have a way of making that side of the ball personal to them and making sure that if nothing else, that part of their house is in good shape. If nothing else, Mike Elko, I promise, will make sure the defense is dialed in. You look at what he was saying after the Las Vegas Bowl where they lose to USC. They say, what are you excited about for next year? He goes, that I never have to watch that defense again. Forget what the offense wasn't doing in that game. He was upset about the defense. And the way the game went, it's hard to blame him. But you could tell it's personal to him. It's personal to him. This job is personal to him. And if you're an A&M fan, I think that when you look across the landscape, there's a lot of cause for optimism, a lot of cause for excitement. And so if you're tired of being on the ride, Aggie fans, I don't blame you. But, hey, buckle up because we're going on this ride one more time in 2025. And I think this is going to be a different one this time around. So we'll enjoy the heck out of it. Speaking of enjoying the heck out of stuff, man, I enjoy the heck out of doing the show with our very own Caden Smith. And every single Thursday, break down the Hard Count headlines brought to you by Huel. Huel, I told y'all before earlier in the show, I'll tell you one more time. Hard Count 15 gets you 15% off for new customers plus a free gift. You kidding me? Lock in with Huel. Black Edition, ready to drink as a complete meal in a bottle, high in protein, low in sugar, and packed with all the nutrients your body needs to perform at its very best. Huel.com, Huel.com. Start the year off strong. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. Cato with the Hard Count headlines. What's up, my guy? How we living?
We're living great, JD. We can't complain. We love doing the headlines. We love when they're particularly sponsored by Huel. And I want to give a special shout out to our audience that might be in a particular city in Florida, Duval. Had to give a shout out to Liam Cohen there, just owning the week this week at this press conference for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh my gosh. And so we're not an NFL show, but I do want to touch on that for a second because we have cringy head coach press conferences all the time. We've had a couple of them that like Nick Sirianni for the Eagles. He's about to go play for his second Super Bowl, and his press conference, I'm not even an NFL guy, and I watched it and I was like, oh, I don't know how that's going to go. Do we buy the Liam Cohen stock? Former Kentucky OC Liam Cohen stock in the Jacksonville head coach, or what?
Me and Trey Yannity, the producer for the Inside Scoop, we have a theory that it was intentionally funny. Like, he was trying to be funny. Like, I think if you're doing your Duval research, it's very clear that the emphasis is on like the Duval. Like, it's he pronunciated the wrong part, put the wrong emphasis on the wrong part. He raised his eyebrow almost like in a cartoonish way before. Regardless, it was hilarious. Any press is positive press, even if you're going into a new head coaching situation. So I'm buying the stock, but we know how it's going to go. If this team is bad, that's going to be the clip that remains in infamy that's going to continue to live on. And if they're good, they're going to probably start using that kind of verbiage of Duval and start saying like that. So I'm excited for the guy regardless. I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, man. I mean, Kentucky OC now in the NFL. It was in the NFL before, I suppose. But now as a head coach, good for him. I'm rooting for the guy after a moment like that. What's the headline saying for us, brother? What we got going on?
Yeah, we're going to double dip here. I know you said you don't want to hear much more about the Connor Stalions situation, but I want to double dip a little bit and kind of dig a little bit into a different angle of that. You mentioned it before. Justin Spiro, who's notably a Michigan State alum, he was the one that was tweeting out those series of videos of John Harbaugh after the Stalions information came out. There were quotes in those videos like, if you cheat to win, then you've already lost. Tell the truth always. If you lie, it's over. These are quotes from Harbaugh from his NFL days, from his days back at Michigan. Like you mentioned, Brett Bielema quote tweeted one of those and said, "Really? Why did you leave? Was looking forward to playing, but instead you ran to the hashtag NFL with the shield," which I thought was just a funny touch on the tweet, making it super official. "See you in the future. Can't wait. Hashtag family Illy ILL," capitalized there in family. Hashtag ill ILL, supporting Illinois. I want to take a step back from this. How do you feel about kind of head coach beef here? Bielema kind of poking the bear at John Harbaugh. They're not going to play anymore in the future, we think, at least. You talk about him and Beamer and that Cheez-It Bowl kind of going at it. How do you feel about this beef in particular, and just coach beef in general when you talk about Twitter and just this situation at large?
The move in general, like, I love Brett Bielema having Twitter fingers. Like, whenever a coach has time, I think it's hilarious. I think it's fun, especially at this point in the year where you're not playing games. Yeah, there's probably other things on your plate, but the fact that you got time to jump on the Twitter sphere and bring some juice, I appreciate the smoke being free. But the context of this is funny because I don't believe, Cato, Jim Harbaugh ever lost to Brett Bielema. Also, he's not going to play him in the future. So saying that he ran to the NFL, to me, I thought Andy Staples made a great point about this on his show. Like, you don't run to the NFL. You get called up to the NFL. And Jim Harbaugh, it was pretty well documented, was going to take an NFL job. There was all signs pointing to it if he got offered one and they won the national title. Like, I have no problem with him riding off into the sunset. But it does feel a touch like, hey, man, unless this is a guy that you're just consistently, forget beating, how about competitive with? I have a hard time seeing the form all the way playing out. I like the smoke, I like the energy, I like all that, but I don't know if that's a battle I want to pick up on Brett Bielema, to be honest.
Yeah, the battle would be so much juicier to pick if this is a matchup we'd see in the future. So I agree, like hitting the Twitter fingers while a coach has already left on the way out. I like that. I hope we see more of this. I hope we have receipts across the SEC, the Big Ten, all these conferences for these teams playing each other in the future. I think the funniest part of it all was like the quote, like the video that was posted was from years ago when he was at San Francisco when he said, "If you cheat to win, you've already lost." Brett Bielema was acting like he said it in that moment. He was like, "Really? Why did you leave?" Like, this was before he had left, before any of the sign stealing stuff, and Bielema just was feeling himself that night. I guess he's a Cheez-It Bowl champion. They had a great year. A lot of people have them projected to be good next year. So shout out Brett, man. I hope a lot of people in the future can take after his lead a little bit when it comes to these coaches being a little bit more interesting. We know Lane Kiffin's been known for the Twitter fingers, but
yeah,
just some good stuff, man. Just some good quality content. But something else I wanted to talk about was Jaden Rashada. He's on the move again, which was mentioned before, but On Three's Pete Nakos reported this week that the Georgia quarterback will be shifting his focus to the spring portal window and working out with a trainer and a quarterback independently in the next few months after entering the portal in January. This was a guy who is the number 6 overall quarterback according to On Three's industry rankings in the 2022 class. And JD, I just wanted to go through what his career has looked like.
Please.
Commits to Miami as a high schooler, then flips his commitment to Florida. Decommits from Florida, again, also came with that nasty lawsuit we know about in terms of him not getting his NIL dollars. Then he goes and commits to Arizona State, signs with them. He starts 2 games there, plays in 3 total games. Then in April of 2024, he transfers to Georgia. Now he's re-entered the portal. What do you make of all this movement, whether it's Rashada specific or just kind of the future of college football and where we stand at right now with player movement and just doing things like this? A guy who is one of the top quarterbacks in that class.
I mean, for Rashada, the Florida thing was unfortunate. And who you blame there is probably a fair amount of blame to go around. I said in the moment, as much as it feels like you hate the Florida situation for the guy, how much are you trading in terms of questions for NFL scouts, which I'm assuming is Jaden Rashada's ultimate goal, to transfer this many times, and this now being the third school in as many years transferring away from a place like Georgia. I don't love the look for him. I don't know if this is a Jaden Rashada thing or if it's his council thing or whatever, but at some point in time, would it not be just more beneficial to sit back for a couple years at Georgia, figure out, just one place and one system and all those things, and then, if it works out at Georgia where you're just 100% not winning the job, okay, let's move forward from there. But I don't love the optics of it. I don't love it for Jaden Rashada when it comes to his future, because like I just said, when he gets to the NFL draft or his pro day or whatever, like there's going to be people saying, hey, why did you transfer 3 different times? Hey, why couldn't you stick at a place like a Georgia, like a Arizona State, like a Florida? So just all these things are creating more questions than answers when it comes to Jaden Rashada, and I don't love that for him when it comes to his future prospects.
Lots of great points there, especially the more questions than answers, because we won't know. We don't know if it's his counsel. We don't know if it's his decision. We don't know the inner workings of these situations. We know as much as we can through guys like a Pete Nakos who report on this stuff pretty closely, but we ultimately won't know. And it really hit me because you look at the 2022 class. Who's the number 1 quarterback in that class? Arch Manning. He's going to start next year. He sat and waited his turn. And if a guy like Arch Manning can do that, who can't do that? It's the easiest way to win a quarterback competition specifically is to stay in the system, stay in the room, stay gaining the trust of your teammates and your coaching staff. Ask a Garrett Nussmeier who came back. Ask all these guys who've stuck it out. I just don't love the move, and I'm curious to see the future of college football with the NIL and the portal and the counsel these guys are getting, these young men. The education just been completely stripped from it. This is a guy who's now missing an entire semester of college because he's going to sit to the side and train and wait for the spring portal window to open. It's a lot of guys acting like pros because they're getting pro money, but at the end of the day, 99% of these guys will not be pros, and you got to get that degree. So that's something I'll always stand on 10 toes for. But just in general, just curious to see how this moves in the future when you talk about the quarterback movement, the player movement. I think it makes a lot more sense when you kind of have a resume to move, but I don't think we're ever going to see it stop because the quarterback position is at a premium. You have any more thoughts there?
Well, no, like you said, I think you made a great point where you said we don't know without a shadow of a doubt all the factors going into it. And so I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I would also say, how many times, Cato, have we seen all it takes at Georgia is one good year? Like, even if you're a grad guy there and you have one good year in that system that's going to throw it around into Mike Bobo, and the best head coach in the sport, and NFL scouts have told Kirby Smart, according to him, like, hey, we love seeing guys come from Georgia and the development process y'all have. Like, how many times have we seen, too, during the combine, some dude from Georgia, not some dude, but a guy from Georgia rolls out there, whether it be a Nolan Smith or a Ladd McConkey, and they light up the combine. I'm sure Georgia's dealing with great raw ingredients. We don't doubt that, but for a Ladd McConkey to go light up the combine, a guy who wasn't necessarily a 5-star prospect, just the development internally at Georgia, the way they do things, I don't love it for him. And again, I think it creates more questions than answers. All you need is one good year.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting where he goes from here. Now, obviously, you leave a place like Georgia that's kind of the gold standard for the last couple of years in college football. Where do you go after that? What schools want you? What schools are available for you in the spring window? Does he go down a level? If you had to bet his odds of transferring at 1.5, I think a lot of people would take the over, just because we've seen guys like this, the talented guys who jump from school to school to school. Their graphic is a bunch of different schools down the line, and it's like, don't forget who you are, man. You're one of the most talented cats out.
Yes.
And if you stay in one place, maybe you can capitalize on that. But we'll digress for now. JD, last thing here. Want to take a look, not necessarily a headline, but the college football playoff projected 12-team field per ESPN in the month of January. Wanted you to pull it up on your laptop. It's
I'm pulling it up right now.
Sure. Going to show it to the people here in a little bit too. But look at the first round buys we have here. Georgia, which means they won the SEC. Of Louisville is the 4 seed as well. Penn State as a 2 seed winning the Big Ten. And Utah, Kyle Whittingham bouncing back and getting that Big 12 title and giving themselves a first round bye. The national championship game will come down to Georgia, Penn State, according to ESPN. Penn State winning it. They have that formula like we talked about. We're bringing in all their good players. You bring in some heavy weaponry when it comes to the defensive coordinator spot. I think the most intriguing part of this bracket, JD, and I want to get your just full thoughts on this very, very early bracket.
Yeah.
8 and 9 seed, Michigan, Ohio State, a rematch.
Yes, dude.
I think that's such an exciting possibility. I think rivalries happening within the bracket is a new door that's been opened with this bracket. What are your thoughts on this ESPN projected field?
Dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's juicy, bro. Yeah. Like, to have Michigan, Ohio State, potentially now if Michigan is playing, so let's see, in the Big Ten, I guess you'd have Penn State winning the Big Ten, so you wouldn't get Ohio State, Michigan 3 weeks in a row. But to have it 2 out of 3 weeks, like that in itself is just mind-boggling. Also worth noting, Michigan being the 8 seed would give them the home playoff game. So Ohio State would have to go to Ann Arbor twice. That in itself is just, I mean, that's wild. Also sneaky, Notre Dame LSU is one of their first-round matchups. A little Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly back and forth. Brian Kelly's return to South Bend with Notre Dame being a 7 seed. Like, the storyline there, to me, writes itself. And then seeing, I mean,
come on, I know.
Bill Belichick, dog.
Yes, sir.
The 11 seed, North Carolina. I mean, stranger things have happened, but that to me was the biggest reach of this whole thing. The sneakiest, team they put in here. It's hard to call a team more sneaky than Louisville, but Utah, like Kyle Whittingham, little bounce back special. Assuming you got Isaac Wilson playing quarterback for you for Utah, like that to me is a really intriguing one if they are the Big 12 champ bouncing back and Kyle Whittingham doing Kyle Whittingham things. So, but Penn State being the champ, dude, that would be the 3rd year now where the Big Ten has the national champ and follows that formula of bring some key pieces back, have elite coordinators, bring your quarterback back, go on a run, and the unfinished business tour, if you will. So a lot of thoughts on this, dude. A lot of thoughts on this. Also, Georgia again losing the not losing the national championship again, but going without a national title for the 3rd year. It's probably some wild takes around Kirby Smart and what Georgia is and all that, but there's a lot there. This is super fun that we have this. I'm all here to break it down. Anything else stick out to you in this 12-team field and how these results shook out according to ESPN?
Yeah, I'm curious how they got here. We talked about that before the show. Like, how does one get to this conclusion? Like, the Michigan and Ohio State thing obviously generates its own version of clickbait, and that's awesome. But I think it is probably the most fascinating part of this, and I don't think we really saw this in this first iteration of the college football playoff. But the only thing that would be crazier than Michigan and Ohio State or any rivals playing within the 12-team playoff is if they were on opposite sides of the bracket and they met in the national championship, which I feel like is a possibility that hasn't gotten talked about enough, and that's on the table. I feel like when you talk about Texas and Texas A&M, we talked about that rivalry a couple days ago. You talk about Clemson and South Carolina. Like, what if rivals are on opposite sides of this bracket one day and meet in the Natty, meet in bowl games we didn't think they would ever meet in? You know what I mean? So I think it definitely opened my mind to the matchup side of things from just a practical college football standpoint. I was big on Utah last year. They disappointed me. It'd be great to see Whittingham get back on top of the Big 12. I'm a bigger believer in Bill Belichick than you. Didn't make your top 10 list. Would have personally made my top 10 coaches list. The resume speaks for itself. But no, I think Bill Belichick getting in the fold there would be fun. This definitely means that Clemson didn't have the year that you thought they would if this is what exactly happened.
True.
And I think Miami, that means Carson Beck and those guys didn't get the job done either. But I think that just locking in Boise State as the 12th seed's obviously the easy thing to do. I think with this new era, though, and the way that college football in general is a very year-to-year, how much talent can you put on the field with a one-year roster? It's what Penn State's clearly trying to achieve this year. It's what Ohio State was trying to achieve last year. I think it's going to be interesting to see which group of 5 team gets in the fold there, because I think it will be different every year. That's my hot take. I think it won't be. Boise State has been on an unreal run. I think it's going to be extremely hard. The margins are too small. I think there's going to be a different team here like every single year, and I think that'll make it fun, so we'll see.
That's going to make it so fun. I mean, I'm with you on the 12th seed, like that discussion in itself. Like, no Ashton Jeanty for Boise State. I'm not doubting what they can do necessarily in 2025, but just how vicious that's going to be from the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the American. Like, we got to bring the 12 seed back when we get back around to games being played. One more thought on this, Cato. Looking at this field, I guess 2 more thoughts. The first thought was sort of a passing thought. If North Carolina makes the playoff, Bill Belichick's all the way gone, right?
Yeah.
He's out, probably.
I mean, I don't know, man. I'm still in the train of thought that this move for him was a big trying to dunk on the NBA or the NFL move. He went through the hiring process. It didn't go his way. They didn't want him having full control. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere where I can't have full control. I'm going to go against the grain. Everyone's leaving the college level. I'm going to come to the college level and dominate. I think he'd try to go full-on dynasty mode. I think the better he is early, the more he stays, and the more he tries to put himself as a staple in the game at the college level. That's my hot take.
Dude, he just hunkers down in Chapel Hill and just builds an Argyle dynasty. Him and Michael Lombardi.
It'd be a beautiful thing. I'm not going to lie. It'd be awesome for the ACC. Notably, first ACC game of the season for the North Carolina Tar Heels, hosting the Clemson Tigers.
Bring it on.
That'll be fun.
That'll
be a blast.
Got to roll in the Chapel Hill. Second thought I had for you, seeing Notre Dame as a 7 seed, to revisit that really quick. Dude, their schedule next year, it's not they don't have a conference schedule, but like they open with Miami at Miami. Yep. They play A&M September 13th, still play USC. You're going to have to go to Pitt, and they're kind of sneaky, I think, the Fighting Pat Narduzzi's. Oh, by the way, you play Syracuse. So to me, if they get the 7 seed, what'd they go? 11-1?
Probably.
Maybe 10-2? I mean, that would be impressive. Like, what that would say about Marcus Freeman and whoever they have playing quarterback, assuming that's CJ Carr or Peanut Butter Steve Jelly, like you and I talk about on there, that would be impressive. That, to me, would be as impressive. Not shocking, but just extremely impressive given their schedule and the perceived gauntlet they have to go through. I love that.
I said this about the group of 5 take is that 12 seed rotates every year. My contrary to that take is that Notre Dame will have that 5 to 8 seed, I guess you'd say. They're hosting a playoff game every year under Marcus Freeman. I think they've fully come to terms with, we'll never get the bye, we'll never be in a conference, but guess what we will do? We will lose a game or two. If we do, it's going to be either an upset loss, you can call an anomaly, or against another really good team that we have on our schedule. And we'll see y'all in South Bend when it's nice and cold in December. Like they're fully comfortable there. I think they're going to be ingrained in that 7, 6, 5, 8. Like they're hosting someone. I think it's going to be. You could call the AFC Championship game the Arrowhead Invitational the last couple of years in the NFL. That first round of the CFP is going to be the South Bend Invitational here when you look at Notre Dame is my take. But, JD, I know this is a fun bracket to look at, but we have an even more fun bracket to unpack here coming up with a weekly segment we're going to have just in the offseason, man. Just cutting it up and talking about more than football, sometimes maybe some football, the weekly CFP field. What do you got for us? Yeah, man. Well, that was a phenomenal take on Notre Dame as we pivot away from that. Cha-ching for the Irish on their South Bend Invitational, cashing in every year. But no, you said that perfectly, man. We're moving into a part of the year now where there's let's call a spade here. There's not college football being played. It hurts all of our hearts. It's not something that we relish. But I started thinking a little bit about the energy that we all had for those rankings being revealed on a Tuesday or whenever we had Selection Sunday, and just the discussion, the debate everyone's got to take, all this and that. And so started thinking, man, what are some topics or some subjects that we can put into a playoff format, a 12-team field, if you will, and just kind of give a good rankings across those different subjects. We did this during or did this on my socials, I guess, for Christmas movies. I have never had so many DMs from y'all with opinions on who was left out, who could make a run, all this. So it's a setup, man. You left off Christmas vacation. You left off Christmas vacation. That's a setup, man.
Totally.
You set yourself up for failure there.
Hey, I liked the resume, but just the strength of schedule to me wasn't all that impressive. I loved the wins and losses, but like to me, I didn't love their conference they played in, which is my own opinion. But the playoff field I want us to go over today, Cato, what to watch now that college football is no longer on our television screens. So here's what I have here for our top 12. The teams that get a bye, your seeds 1 through 4. Number 1 seed in the whole bracket is year-round college football content. Now, we are biased. There's no way around that. We are very fortunate and grateful to do this for a job. But there's a lot of good content out there. Like if you haven't watched Andy and Ari on 3, do yourself a favor and watch that. The On 3 Recruits channel with Josh Newberg, Steve Wiltfong, they crush it over there. Also, Joel Klatt does a phenomenal job. If you haven't checked out his stuff, Josh Pate, everyone knows who that is. Todd McShay. Like there's a lot of really great year-round content. So when college football is not being played, doesn't mean there's not still college football topics to be tackled and unpacked. So that's number 1 seed. The second seed here, this is for the sickos. Full game reruns on YouTube.
Sickos.
Full game reruns, all right? So you can kind of recreate the magic of a Saturday. There's nothing like, Cato, sitting down on a Saturday afternoon in, call it April, Saturday morning even, and you turn on whatever game you want to from the past year. Maybe rewatch Ohio State, Oregon, watch Georgia, Alabama. We're talking about that game. Like, cinematic. If it's a little bit longer than a movie, maybe the same length as a movie, depending on what you watch, that to me gets the 2 seed. The 3 seed here is The Office. Okay, it's a blue blood in every single sense. It's great whether you're watching intensely. Storyline is tremendous. The humor is next level. couldn't have that kind of humor in today's entertainment. But to me, The Office is a 3 seed. At the 4 seed, the last of the teams that gets a bye is Breaking Bad. Best storyline, in my opinion, of any television show I've watched. Very, very dialed in. So those are the teams that get a bye. Now, 5 through 12, where it gets a little bit more nuanced. You know, you have teams that making their case. We go big on the eye test here, 5 through 12. Speaking of eye test, number 5, I got the inside of your eyelids. Take a nap, man.
Oof.
Right? Like that gets a bye for you, right, Cato?
I know my early dark horse in this bracket. I mean, that's the Ohio State spot. Like, it's where you want to be.
It's where you want to be.
That's the Ohio State of this bracket. It's the most talented team, I think.
Take
minute
a nap.
for minute, second for second, hour for hour. Yeah,
That's
my early favorite. I like that one a lot.
I think that's a huge. That's a big one. The 6th seed is go watch nature. Go be outside, get some fresh air.
Another tough one. Watch
some birds. I don't know. I mean, I haven't necessarily partaken in the bird watching, but maybe this offseason it's something that happens. At number 7, getting back to the screen, Suits. Dude, I watched Suits a year ago, and I feel like I worked it into a bunch of different content analogies and whatnot on this show, so maybe the folks that were dialed in at home already knew that. But like when I stopped watching Suits, Cato, I legitimately like got sad when it was all over. I was
that's
like,
when you
dang,
know that's when you know it's a good show. That's when you know it's a good show, when you get nice and sad at the end, man. That's
I was in too deep. I thought it was real life. And I also like there was all this legal stuff going on in college football with like the NCAA and Tennessee at that point in time. So I just have all these. I think the Michigan stuff was going on too when I was watching it. So it's just like it felt very real in that world. So they get the 7 seed, the 8 seed. I'm curious if you've seen this. Severance. You a Severance guy, Cato?
Oh yeah. So I got on Severance late. Watched the first season last year. And then my Apple Plus subscription has since been done away with. So I'm the sicko or smart guy who's going to let the full second season unfold, and when that drops, I'm going to hit it all. So I'm not a weekly Severance guy right now. I've heard great things about season 2, but I will be there soon. Don't worry, fellas.
Dude, that's really smart. I didn't even think about that because they do it old school. Does Apple TV where they like release one a week, which is cool. But I'm like, dude, I'd much rather you just
if I had the subscription, I'd be there. Trust me. I like weekly television. Gives you a week to marinate on it, talk to your coworkers and your friends about it, but. Right now, man, we don't have Apple Plus. That's on us right now. So we're gonna wait for that to come back, and then we'll be back in the lab.
Yeah, maybe you and I can go in on an Apple Plus subscription. We'll talk off the
code hard count.
We'll get it down. Code hard count. Stop. Don't tempt me. That's the password and the username. We'll see. At number 9, college basketball. Now, I am not a fan of college basketball during college football season because I feel like it takes some oxygen out of the room, kind of distracts us a little bit. Like I'm not really big on us having to sit here on a Tuesday and watch whoever's playing go to overtime. We're like, dude, I just want to see who's ranked in the top 12 so I can get a good gauge for where my team sits going into next season or next week rather, and how our season's going to look. So with that being said, the point of this whole prompt, college football season's over. I really appreciate college basketball. I appreciate a good matchup any given weeknight. I appreciate even more so what March Madness is. Like, that's a blast. You catch bits and pieces, but when March Madness hits, we'll be all the way dialed in. So that's the 9 seed. At number 10, your 10 seed is Tavon Austin highlights.
Oh,
so this is I'm trying to think of a good comparison from this past playoff. This to me is maybe the SMU of the playoff. Like, people are going to question, do they deserve to be there? Hey, that video is only 9 minutes and 39 seconds, but if you've watched the Tavon Austin highlights, you can kill some real time watching that back a few times, watching it in slow-mo, arguably the best highlight of all time. I'm speaking of the West Virginia highlights. You have a Tavon Austin highlight take, though, on his high school stuff. Is that right?
The Dunbar High School highlight tape, it's right up there, man. It's the kind of thing where it's always queued up as the next watch. After you watch the college one, naturally the high school one's there. Just cut it on, man. It's just not going to be a waste of your time. I can assure you that, bro. Bro's been like that.
It's just ridiculous. I didn't realize how long we've gone, so I'll go fast here. At 11, Squid Games. I preferred in Korean. I know that's maybe a hot take. If you want to do dubbed over, go for it. But if you can dial in the subtitles, it's at 11 for me. And at 12, I got NFL draft content. Love the college football aspect. Love seeing familiar faces. I don't have it higher because, one, it's just it's a thing that kind of wears on me until we get to the draft. But overall, I appreciate the draft content. It's a lot of fun.
JD, you know my interests in a 5 versus 12 seed game between eyelids and NFL draft. I can't do that. Who's your favorite child? You know, like what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Child? That'd be a hard one for sure. I'd have some of these higher People would probably have some low ones. I'd love to hear what people would like to add to the mix. I think there's a good balance of shows here between new and old. I'm an NBA guy, so NBA League Pass would be here. I think if March Madness was here instead of college basketball, it's probably a 1 through 4 seed just within itself, March Madness. But good work. I'm curious to hear what the people say about this.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you bringing some additions to the table there and bringing some edits. Also appreciate the good folks at Axia Time bringing you the hard count today, official timepiece of the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. Tremendous watches. You got a watch for every team that made the playoffs. So this time next year, I've said it ad nauseum. I'll keep saying it. App State, when you make the dance, me and Cato grabbing some watches from Axia Time. Also an Ohio State National Championship specific watch. Within that box, confetti from the post-game celebration in Atlanta. Check them out, axiatime.com. That's AXIAtime.com. A watch that tells so much more than time. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling for Cato on the ones and twos for myself, JD PicKell. We will see y'all